If you're using donor conception to build your family and you're worried that you're not going to be as connected to your child because they're not genetically related to you, this episode is for you. We're going to talk today about genetic connection with donor conception and genetic grief. Now, you may be feeling a bit of a loss that you're not using your genetics, or maybe you're not and you're wondering why you're not. Either way, it's normal. In this episode, we're going to talk about what genetic grief is and isn't, and why so many families feel even more connected to their children than they thought they would. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I've seen thousands of donors and donor egg and donor sperm and donor embryo recipients. You know, I built a donor embryo program and ran a donor egg program. I've been working in the fertility industry for almost 30 years and have seen so many people and families, and even ran a workshop for donor conceived children. So I have seen so many people go through this, and it's important to bust some of the myths around this issue so you can understand what is going to cause you to have a good relationship with your child and what you don't need to worry about. From our Building Your Family community, this is the Building Your Family podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Schumann, author, researcher, and reproductive medicine therapist. I purposely did not call this episode Genetic Grief because not everybody feels grief. Genetic loss is natural. There is a gap between what you expected your family would look like and what it's actually going to look like. And for some, it's very intense, and for others, it's not. For some people, there's a lot of sadness, there's jealousy, there's anxiety, there's resentment, there's all sorts of intense feelings. And for other people, there's just relief. They're finally going to have a child and they feel so good about having that child. All of these feelings are normal. This term, genetic loss, is really a definition of what the loss means, not a verdict on how you should feel. And even though you may see in social media a lot of people talking about how it's important to grieve these losses, or the opposite, that you should just get over it and move on because after all, you're going to have a family and you should be happy about that, you don't need to listen to that because you are the only person who knows how you feel and how this feels for you. And while we're on this topic, another thing that is important not to listen to is this idea that you have to be fully completed with your grief before you start your journey. That's absolutely not true. The vast majority of people grieve in any area of their lives slowly, right? If we think about times in your life where you've had some grief, maybe even you lost your grandmother, and maybe it hurts because you were so close with her. And then over time, maybe you think about her less and less. And then maybe you think about her on your birthday, or you wonder what she would have said to this dilemma that you have. You start to have different sorts of feelings, and they start to subside a bit over time. That is very typical of grieving. Now, with this grief, it may pop up in your life over and over again in small ways over time. Or it could just feel like a loss of this dream that you had when you were a child about your child looking like you, having your bushy eyebrows or your parents' dimples or your father's sense of humor. You could have all of these ideas that you've been holding inside of you for so long and feel like there's nowhere to put them because this is not going to be your experience. Either way, these feelings are normal. I illustrate this in several stories I tell in my book, Building Your Family, The Complete Guide to Donor Conception. So one of the stories I told was meeting with a woman who needed to use donor eggs. And she decided that she wanted to have a child more than she wanted to have a genetic connection to that child. And it wasn't a really difficult decision for her to make. She said to me, if I baked a cake with a Betty Crocker mix, or if I baked a cake from scratch, It's going to taste the same. So to me, it doesn't really matter. I want to be a parent. On the other hand, I worked with another woman for a very long time who really struggled to accept donor conception. She then got pregnant and felt disconnected from the baby. And throughout her pregnancy, she really struggled with this idea of having a donor conceived child. She had twins, and her girl did not have the name that she wanted the baby to have. She named her initially when the children were born and then decided that it did not fit. She really needed to feel a sense of ownership as a parent and feel a connection to this child. And that was it for her. After she did that, everything changed. She felt so much closer to this child, and now she's a very happy mom of teenage kids. So different people have very different experiences. The important thing is that neither one of these experiences made these women bad parents. Both of them are great parents. Both of them love their children. These are individual experiences based upon who they are as people and have no connection to how much they love their child. Now let's think about the ways that genetic loss can show up in your life. Sometimes it's obvious, like the ways that we've just spoken about, but sometimes it's not so obvious. I talk a lot about this in my book and in my masterclass, which you can find in our membership and is really wonderful. But suffice it to say, our bodies don't always explicitly tell us what's wrong. So, for example, we might find that we have a very hard time choosing a donor. We may be obsessing about their hair or their personality or their story. We may be looking for somebody who looks like our parents or our sister, or maybe somebody who's very athletic or very bright. There are all sorts of ways that we are trying to make ourselves feel better because we are choosing the genetics of somebody that we don't know to build the most meaningful and intimate relationship in our lives. And that naturally does not feel comfortable. I think it's safe to say that most of us did not grow up thinking that we were going to use the genetics of somebody else to build our family. Most of us grew up thinking about having children with our eye color or with our hair color or with characteristics of our family. So it's very difficult for our bodies to absorb this sense of loss. Even if we don't feel it, we could be sensing it in different ways. And it's very important to remember that because that could lead us down a path of not choosing the right donor or focusing on things that we can't control just so that it makes us feel comfortable. And while comfort is important, it's very important to feel comfortable with your donor. The most important things are your child's health and well being. Now, you may be thinking, Lisa, we're part of a queer couple. So this really is not about us. We really feel like this is not an issue because for a very long time, we knew that we were not going to use our genetics to have a child. And that may be true. However, I'd like to share with you some research that I conducted when I was director of mental health services for a group called Gay Parents to Be. So we served a lot of families, and many of the gay men that we saw wanted to have a child with each of their genetics. And that was very common. The vast majority of them felt this way. But of course, observation is not the same as research. So we conducted the research just to make sure our observations were true, and they were. Now, we were also seeing lesbian couples who didn't as frequently feel like they needed to use their own genetics. So I decided to conduct another study on the lesbian couples that came into the office. And although I wondered if it was because of old stereotypes of women being more nurturing and maybe not caring about their genetics in the same way, I was absolutely wrong. It turns out that some women really wanted to use their genetics, other women didn't care. But then there was a third group, and that group was the people who wanted to carry. Sometimes they were the same people who were using their eggs, and sometimes they weren't. But in this situation, women are different. Women have two ways to bond with their children, where men only have one. So, why am I telling you all of this? Because I think we need to realize that much of this that we're feeling has to do with bonding. We really want to bond with our child. We want to feel connected to our child, and we want our child to feel connected to us. And when we don't share our genetics with our children, sometimes that can feel threatening. Sometimes it can feel like this child is not going to feel connected to me. Or maybe they'll feel more connected to the genetically linked parent. Or maybe other people out there will think that they're more connected to the genetically linked parent. There are so many fears and anxieties around this. So let's talk for a moment about what bonding really means. When you have your baby, whether or not you're genetically related, whether or not you carried that child, you are going to love and nurture your child. You're going to bring your child home, you're going to snuggle with them, you're going to love them. Then they may cry, and you will think, are they crying because they're hungry? Are they crying because they need to burp? Are they crying because they need a diaper change? And you try to figure these things out over time. And eventually you get used to your child and your child gets used to you. You start hearing them cry and you think, oh, they're just tired. Or, oh, I could tell they're really hungry. You start to get to know your child. Now, in a situation where there is some significant mental health or substance abuse issue, that attunement doesn't happen as readily. People often have a lag between what they hear and how quickly they respond. But in a normal scenario, nobody's perfect. It's a matter of effort. We are trying to take care of our child the best that we can. And our child feels that. They feel that we are connected to them. When your child is born, they don't know that they're different from you. All they know is they need to be responded to. And when they cry out for something and the world responds to them, they feel safe and they feel a sense of trust. And that sense of trust, which I talk about in my developmental milestones video, is the most important part of development. It is the part of development that allows us to be trusting of the universe, that allows us to feel sane, that allows us to feel grounded in the world. It is so important. And as this connection, this back and forth, the taking care of your child responding to you responding to them, continues over and over, your child and you will become more and more connected. And that process is not about genetics. It's about connection. And what about those of you who felt disconnected during your pregnancy, who through your whole pregnancy, you were worried, am I going to bond with my baby? I don't feel connected in utero. That's absolutely fine. You have plenty of time to connect with your child. You know, as your parenting experience goes on over time, you will find that repair is really important. And you will repair yourself and your relationship with your child by connecting with them in the way that I've just described. You will become very connected and very loving with your child. I've seen it time and time again, even in these situations where people worry about their pregnancy because they don't feel connected. So, here are some practical tips that you can think about. Number one, it's very important to remember that you can have mixed feelings about anything in life, but certainly about this. Your feelings about your losing your genetic connection to your child and the feelings of love and gratitude and connection you have with your child are totally separate. When you go through fertility treatment, they feel connected because you are both not going to be able to have this genetic connection and you're not a parent yet. But when you become a parent, you no longer feel this ball of stress. They separate. You are connected to your child. You feel in love with your child, and you're so happy to be a parent and do all the things that you've always wanted to do. On the other hand, you may still be feeling this grief or this loss or some other feelings about not being genetically connected to your child. Does that mean that you don't love your child? No. This is your issue to deal with over time. And it may be very complicated or very simple, but it is your personal issue to tackle. It has nothing to do with how much you love your child. Number two, it can be very helpful to talk about specific fears. So, whether you're talking to your partner or talking to a therapist, it can be very helpful to work out your specific fears. So, maybe you think, I don't really feel comfortable having a child who's not genetically connected to me. But as you dig in deeper, maybe it's because you always really wanted to have a connection with your father and dreamt about the fact that maybe you would have your father's dimples and see them in your child. Maybe you always felt like you wanted to have a child that looks like me or has my musical talent or has my IQ, and I'm not able to have those things. Maybe there are other issues that are underlying some of your concerns, and to be able to get under that and specifically deal with it and name them can be really helpful. Number three, I think that sometimes being able to find ways to create rituals can be really helpful. When you're concerned about bonding with your child and you're concerned about this unity as a family, it can be so nice to have rituals as a family. So maybe you are the family that has pizza on Friday nights, or maybe you're the family who likes to go on a walk on Sunday afternoons, or maybe you have some religious or cultural ritual that you like to continue. Maybe there are things in your family tradition that you like to continue. But whatever those things are, if you can talk about them with your partner and try to integrate them into your life with your child, it can really feel so nice because it really helps cement that bonding. Number four, get support. Having a therapist that you can talk to who understands third party reproduction can be so valuable in your process of grieving or making peace with this loss. It's really helpful to have somebody who can walk you through these issues and help you separate what belongs to you and what belongs to your child. And as I just said, these feelings of concern that you're not genetically connected belong to you. Your child is going to love you. You and your partner, if you have one, are going to be their only parents, and they are going to see you as that. So if you need help processing your feelings, so you could move forward and get closer to them and make peace with some of these difficult feelings, it could be enormously helpful. You may be thinking, well, that's fine, but right now I am stuck with these terrible ideas in my head and these obsessive thoughts about my child not being genetically connected to me. So, what am I supposed to do? One of the things you can do is imagine that your old self is talking to your new self. Your old self has all of these ideas that you grew up with, all these hopes and dreams and feelings about what your family would look like. But your new chapter is very different and is going to be beautiful if it isn't already. So you need to have these two parts of yourself talk to each other. Here are some things that you can say. So you may catch your old self thinking, I'm a bad parent. I shouldn't be thinking about this. I shouldn't be worrying about genetics. Why am I doing this? There might be something wrong with me. And your new self can say, I understand you feel this way. This is a very natural response to something that you never expected would happen. And although you may be grieving a version of parenthood that you were not going to have, it doesn't cancel out how you feel about your child or how close your bond will be. Or your old self says, I feel nothing in my pregnancy, or I feel like this child is not connected to me. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Why am I not feeling more attached? Your new self can remind your old self that it's very natural for your brain to focus on survival. Our brains are built for survival, not for the things that we want. Our brains will tell us when there's danger around. So sometimes it may make us numb. Sometimes it may make us distracted. Sometimes it may make us sad. Our bodies will do anything to get away from something that's perceived as dangerous. So it doesn't really have the space and time to think about the benefits of this beautiful life you're about to live. And remember, there is no donor conception purity test where the person who feels the least conflicted is the person who's going to be the best parent. That's just absolutely not true. You are going to love your child and have a beautiful life with your child. Your goal is not to eliminate every negative feeling you have, but instead to embrace them, to make room for them, to make peace with them, to sort them out in the best way that you know how, while you're moving forward to building the family that you want to have. Genetic loss is a very real thing for many people using donor conception to build their family, but it is not a statement on how much you will love your child. No matter what you've been through or how you felt about having a donor conceived child, no matter how much anxiety you've had, stress, or concern, your child is going to think about you and remember you as a person who loves them, who cuddles with them, who gets up at 2 a.m. and cleans up their vomit, who stays up at night with them when they're scared, and who's going to be there for them no matter what. And that is where your bond with your child lives. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you want more support, you can find it in our workshops. We offer live workshops on donor conception, on surrogacy, and on parenting donor conceived children. We also have lots of information in our membership community and a beautiful community to support you every step of the way. You can find all of that information also in the show notes. And most of all, thank you for coming. I really appreciate your time. And you being here and staying here until the end really tells me about not only your care and thoughtfulness, but about the parent that you're going to be. You're going to be a wonderful parent. You're going to love your child. Your child will love you. And you are going to love the life that you're going to live. Until next time. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you'd like more personalized support, more information, and more education, you can find it in the show notes under the Building Your Family community. We'd love to see you inside. And if you were interested in today's topic, you will really like this video.